Well, good evening and welcome to Jazz After Dark. How you doing out there today? All is good, I hope. Grab a drink, hang out with me for a minute. We're going to be enjoying some Broken Barrel Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, finished with Broken Barrel staves. Okay, let's see here. I hope you're having a good night out there and all is good. Ooh, smells kind of sweet. We'll just give that a little taste and see what happens. It occurs to me that we talk a lot about getting your dough straight here, and I enjoy talking about that. I find that kind of fun, actually. But often, we don't give the specifics, like, what do you need to know? What data points do you need? Being the data guy, it's always about talking about data. I don't give you anything. That is very sweet. Ooh, okay, it's a little stronger. That is harsh. Very good though, actually. This was a discount, actually. I don't often find myself in like a bourbon store, but I saw one on the way home and stopped in and looked for something a little different, and this was on sale. It was $35, so I don't know if that's good or bad or whatever, but very sweet, but very spicy. So you have to like both of those. I will give that a B, solid B, actually. Yeah, it's tasty. I'll give you that. It's missing a little something, you know. It's sweet, but it's not sweet enough. It just it gives you a little hint of that. It's spicy, but it's really spicy. Maybe a little earthy in there as well. All right, so we're going to go through this here tonight. Hope you're enjoying something yourself. And we're going to go over some of the things you want to know. And this may be a hint as to something we're about to work with here with clients. But we're going to do it. So one of the first things that we want to know, my trusty iPad here, we want to know naturally your savings rate. How much money are you actually saving? The topic is irrelevant. What is your savings rate? Because if your savings rate is high, let's say it's 22%. My little sample here apparently is 22%. If your savings rate is high, then we can dissect it from there. And start saying, well, you don't need to save 22% for retirement if you're not, you know, of close to retirement age. So what else do you want to do? What goals can we shoot for? So that one's pretty simple. It's really just the amount of money that's coming in that gets pushed off to the side before being spent. Number two is your spending rate, or in the corporate world, we would say your burn rate. Like, you ever seen on Shark Tank where the guy, you know, there's obviously somebody that comes into the tank and they've got a product or something, and the sharks know that this guy is already knowledgeable. He's like, I came from Goldman Sachs, private equity, blah, blah, blah. So they skip with all the nonsense, like how much do you have in a bank? And they just say that key word. What's your burn rate? That's what they say in the corporate world. And so you could say the same thing, but essentially we're trying to figure out how much money is going out the door into things that you spend money on. Insurance and mortgages and nights out to dinner or whatever. And I approach this a little bit differently. I don't care if you go to Starbucks 10 times a day. Can you afford it or not? Is it putting you on a different path other than what you told me you wanted to do? Okay, well, now we have a problem. But I don't buy this whole thing. I think it's rather elementary to think of like, well, stop going to Starbucks. Really? Like, is that going to make a difference? I know that stuff's expensive, but... so we want to know that. We got your savings rate, your spending rate, pretty basic stuff. This falls under the cash flow umbrella. So inside of that, we're solving for a few things here. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about your debt rate. Do you know your debt to income ratio? Most people don't until they go apply for something and they go, hey, your debt to income ratio is good. You can have the loan. It's all fine. And we don't even ask what the debt to income ratio is. So if you're buying something that's more of a luxury item, then your debt to income ratio can't be over 42%. You can go a little bit higher sometimes if you have liquid reserves, but you want to know what that number is, because then the first question you ask to a lender is, I'm considering a loan for this yacht or whatever it is that you're buying. What would the impact to my debt to income ratio be if I purchase this yacht? And they say, well, with the payment of the yacht and your mortgage and everything that you have, your total debt relative to your income is 45%. And yes, we will make you that loan, or no, that's a little close for us. So we always want to know where that stands, and it gives you a good benchmark. Rather than saying, I don't want to have debt, you go, I want my debt to income ratio to be 15%, something manageable. I don't mind if 15% of my income has to go towards debt and then therefore it has a interest payment of some kind, if it's reasonable and you're okay with that, of course. We certainly want to know your tax rate. I'm not talking about your tax bracket. I'm talking about your tax rate, your effective tax rate. In other words, you made X number of dollars and that moved you up the brackets. You then had your maybe standard deduction, or if you're fortunate enough, you have more than the standard deduction and you're, chipping away, charitable deductions, all whatever it is that you get to go above the standard. And we say, okay, well, this is my total income. The tax that I owe on that is X. Therefore, my effective tax rate is 8%, 14%. It's going to be an odd number. It won't be the tax bracket. We live in an interesting time where the current Trump tax breaks, or whatever you call them, they give you a standard deduction that's like $27,000. It's something that's super high. What is it? $20,500 or $22,000 or something this year. And so often we find normal W-2 workers that are maybe making their way through life in your 30s, 40s, whatever. You're not going over the standard deduction. So it's a little bit different in these days. Nonetheless, you take your total income minus the standard deduction. If you don't do anything more than that, that's your total income, your adjusted gross income with which you would owe taxes on. We want to know what that rate is, because if we find that you're saving a lot of money and you don't spend a whole lot or something's going on there, you don't have a lot of debt, your debt to income ratio is low, but your tax rate is really high, what happens? We just looked at 4 things right in a row and said, that number's high. We have money to do something about that. We can now open up some doors that are beyond the basics of, we'll put more in your 401k or see if your traditional IRA is filled up. So it's important to know that, especially as an advisor. Naturally, your income is interesting. That's kind of a given. You want to know where that stands as far as, that goes. And I would take it a step further and say, what is your lifetime income? How you may be commission-based or sales-based and your income kind of fluctuates. Well, how do we smooth that out and look through your life and say, well, your income rate, it's not really a rate, but your income will be X in some years, and then maybe it's cyclical, and so in other years it'll be lower. How do we smooth that out and have a big picture, sort of holistic view of your income, rather than just say, well, I make $88,000, or I make $120,000 and my wife makes $88,000, or whatever it is. So that all is stuff that falls under the cash flow equation. If we can solve for that, you already saw one example where I'm able to go, hey, I see a problem. Tell me more about that, rather than say, Dustin, I'm gonna buy a truck and my debt to income's low and all this stuff, and I don't see the fact that your tax rate is high. I go, what's going on there? Let's talk about that for a second, because maybe I find out you're a business owner and having that truck affords you some depreciation, which takes off your income, and all of a sudden your tax rate goes down, and we're using the savings that was extra that you didn't need to save for retirement. I'll say that that's the broken barrel ranting there, but you see how fast we go through something and go, something's off. What if that something saves you $2,500 in taxes? It's important to know those numbers so we can, dig down to it quickly. All right, now we move on to the asset side of things. The easiest thing to start with is, what is your total, and I'm going to use corporate words here, what is your total liquidity? Have you noticed that banks these days are saying, yeah, you qualify for the mortgage, for the yacht, whatever it is, the luxury item, the extra item that you didn't need, the ATV. It's jet ski season down here in Florida, so everybody's buying a jet ski. It's okay that you can afford that. Yes, it's $800 a month or whatever. But we want to see that you have liquid reserves to make those payments in the event that you lose your job. We see what's happening in the tech sector and now bleeding over into the consumer staples areas, and now bleeding over into industrials and the job layoffs that are happening there. Banks aren't stupid. They say, show us that you have some liquid reserves. So when I say liquidity, I'm not talking emergency fund. It may be an emergency that you use it for, but I'm saying put it all into one. What liquid cash do you have? It may be that you have extra money in your checking account. You keep money under the mattress, right? You could have a bond or a CD that's maturing or something. That's liquidity, or could be liquidity, that you would use in the event that you needed to sustain your monthly expenses. buy the luxury item, whatever it is. I want to know what that liquidity is. And we want that liquidity rate to be something that is over, around that 6-month time period, because most of the time we're talking about emergency funds there. So when we say liquidity, we're saying, what is the length of time that you could survive even if we add an additional debt, or we add an additional rental property or something like that? What do we have in terms of liquidity? That's becoming more important because now banks are asking for liquidity. So now we're saying not only for emergencies, or not only if you lose your job, but what if you want to purchase a new Tesla and you've earned it and you should? Well, we need to show liquidity there as well. So we want to take a look at that. An asset is liquidity. Naturally, an asset is your retirement accounts. I don't want to know how much, well, I do want to know how much you have in your retirement accounts, but I want to know how much of your retirement is covered. Could you survive for 18 years in retirement with the money that you have, including withdrawing for taxes and everything? Or is it low, right? Are you just getting started? You're playing catch up? What is it? The dollar amount is irrelevant, because if you have $1 million, this person has 300,000. I have clients right now that are retired that have about 300,000. They're going to be just fine, because they don't have those expenses. Their house is paid off. Their kids are grown up. There's not anything going on. The kids, thank God, can support themselves. And so they'll be just fine. But if I say $300,000 in retirement accounts for 22 years of someone's retirement, you might laugh at that. You know what I mean? So the dollar amount is sort of independent to you. I want to know the length of time that dollar amount stretches you out there. And so how would you do that? Take the value of your total retirement accounts and then divide it by your yearly spending. How much will you need to spend in retirement? How much do you have? If you have 100,000, but you need to spend 100,000, you naturally can afford to retire for 1 year. That's what I'm after right there. Let's go a little bit deeper on that, Real estate, that's an asset, of course, whether it's your personal property. A lot of people get to be a certain age, they downsize. Well, you have equity in that property. We should count that. That's a part of your net worth. That's a part of your retirement, your future goals, whatever you're shooting for. It could be rental properties, however you've found your way through. It could be commercial properties. I have a lot of clients that things go in waves, and it seems like we have a lot of clients asking questions that have commercial properties. Kind of fascinating. Maybe you own a business. So an asset is a business, your stake in the business. Jazz Wealth, I have a stake in Jazz Wealth. That's me, it's my business, right? Everybody else here, as people come up and go through the ranks, I like to give them a piece of my stake. I don't own 100% of Jazz Wealth. Everybody gets a little piece and they get more as they grow. So the piece that I own is an asset. I could borrow against it. I could sell off pieces of it. I could lend it out for other people to potentially make money off of it. There's a lot of things you can do there. And so I want to know of the asset or the stake that you have in your business, how long does that let you survive, right? Is your business successful? And maybe the stake that you have, if liquidated at a fire sale or sold to other shareholders, could it let you survive 13 years, 35.4 years, 23.8 years? What is that? I want to look at it that way instead of saying, tell me how much money you have, The last thing that I would say falls under the sort of asset thing is more of a number and less of a physical cash amount or something, is, what do we want to call it? Financial independence. I don't have a fancy word for it. So your financial independence, in other words, take your entire net worth, liquid net worth, and say, if all hell broke loose, how long could I survive? Even if I'm not retired, how long could I survive on those dollars? We want that number to be high. Those of you that want to retire early, those of you that don't call it retirement, but you say, I just want to be independent. I want to work when I want. And I want, all this freedom that we talk about. All right, so we want to know that number. The last two things that I think are important. The first is insurance. I don't sell insurance. I don't know people that do, that's a separate thing here. But how much of your net worth is at risk? I'm not saying you got your net worth, $10 million and you need to insure $10 million. That's ridiculous, right? But how much of your net worth is considered at risk? Anything under 30% is where you want to be. I'm talking about your net worth being driven by your income. What happens if you become disabled long term? You get injured. You can no longer do your job. You're a tile setter. You ran a great business and now your back gave out. Your knees gave out, right? These are real things. So I want to know how much of that is protected. We like to see about 30%. That's the sort of the where we see people land. 30% of your income which is driving your net worth, is protected. The remainder of that insurance, of course, is things like liability insurance, maybe long-term care insurance, not as popular anymore, but we certainly want to look at the risk side of things. So you want to know those numbers as well. And the last piece of it, I would call it the efficiency rate. Now, this includes your investments. I want to know, and there's a couple ways we can go about this, but I want to know of the investments that you have for retirement, how efficient are you being? How do you score there? A, B, C, D, give it a percentage, whatever you want. Are you invested in tax-free municipal bonds in your Roth IRA? That is horribly inefficient. We don't want to do that. So that requires a little bit more nuance, a little bit more focus, magnifying glass, whatever you want to say. So we're down there looking at why is that in this account? You may like that investment. Let's just move it over here to this account. Makes more sense over there because it's tax free and it's slow growth. We don't mind being in a brokerage account. We want high growth, fast moving, aggressive positions in our Roth. So the efficiency score for someone who has a tax-free municipal bond in their Roth IRA would be very low. How we rank that is maybe up for debate. I've got some ideas. And then the second piece to your efficiency score, which is sort of separate, is the cash that you have. Where is it? If you have, back to the beginning when we talked about your liquidity or emergency fund, if you have $30,000 in your liquid cash, emergency fund or upcoming purchases or whatever, is it just sitting there? Is it in a high interest savings account? Is it in a money market fund? Is it in a short-term conservative investment? What are we doing there? So I want those dollars to be efficient. And that encompasses the whole life of somebody, which allows us to branch off in lots of different directions. But that puts together a whole system where now, if I'm having a conversation with you and you say, my daughter is pregnant and I want to move closer to support them and have a great time being a grandparent. Okay, now I can answer that question, right? Changes your income, changes your tax rate, changes your equity in your house. What are we doing with that equity? Now we can go piece by piece. If you come along and you say, I've just always had 401ks and every time I switch jobs, I roll it into an IRA and I just pick whatever's in there. Now I'm going to immediately go, how efficient are you being? Probably not very efficient. If you're not paying attention, that's my chance to dive in there and go, fix this, or you're missing out on growth. So you see how each one of these little pockets all of a sudden has us going, I've got the data to give you the best advice. And notice that it's non-biased advice. We don't sell stuff, right? So if I tell you, go out and get short-term disability insurance that covers 33% of your income or 60% of your income, or bring me back quotes that show me the varying levels of income that we're covering, long-term disability insurance, bring that back to me and let me look at it. I don't make money on that. I don't care which one you pick. I'll give you my advice and help you with that, of course, for clients, and that's my job, really. But you see how now we have the information. If you take this information, you're someone, I don't like Jazz Wealth. I don't know you. I don't want to deal with you, whatever. Hopefully we wear you down, right? But if you look at that and you go, okay, Dustin, now I've got the pieces that are enough to put in a spreadsheet or whatever you want, that now I can see everything and go, that's not too good. I can only live for 9.1 years of retirement and I'm 5 years away. Need to address that. Maybe you'll go find a planner or your uncle or Jazz or whoever it is to help you out. So that's a long-winded way of saying there are some data points that you need and would probably like to have, and that now puts them in little categories where you can take a look. That's all I got. That was a long one. I'm sorry. Hope that's helpful. Hopefully it gets you thinking. If you think I missed something, let me know, because I don't think I did. And I would like to expand on this as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Remember, if you are a client of Jazz Wealth, we do Wine and Wealth every Thursday. It is a live class that we do for clients in our own custom portal. And this week, we're going to be talking about the intricacies and the details of how the FedNow program works. and then the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, which is the US digital dollar that they're working on. Not working on, it's basically there. So we're going to go through each one of those. What do they mean? Specifically, how do they work? And so you can drive your own opinion. I'm just going to share with you how they work, and you can call doom and gloom, or you can call government overreach, or be happy that it's a digital dollar. That part doesn't matter to me, but we're going to go through them so you know what to expect before this all hits the news media, because surprisingly, it's not out there. All right, we'll see you later. Thank you.